case of Nancy Guthrie, mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. Today, the Pima County Sheriff's Department announcing it has cleared all members of the Guthrie family and their spouses as possible suspects in the case.
Nancy Guthrie, the mother of NBC's Savannah Guthrie, vanished from her Tucson home under mysterious circumstances. Now, the investigation has taken a dramatic and unnerving turn. Sources reveal that during an FBI interrogation, her son-in-law appeared visibly unsettled, struggling under the weight of detailed questions about that fateful night. Leaked footage reportedly captures tense pauses, repeated answers, and shifting composure, giving a rare glimpse behind the closed doors of a federal investigation. So, what really happened? And what could these reactions mean for the case? Let's find out. Inside the FBI interrogation room, according to multiple sources close to the investigation, the atmosphere inside the FBI interview room changed in a way that immediately caught the attention of everyone present when Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law was called in to discuss the night she disappeared. At first, the conversation followed a standard investigative pattern, focused on basic facts. Agents confirmed the timeline of events, asked who had been present at the family dinner, and double-checked when Nancy had returned to her home. These were routine steps designed to establish a clear picture of her final known movements. The atmosphere in the room subtly shifted as the agents moved from broad questions to sharp, specific ones. They asked about the garage code, the exterior lighting, and Nancy's nightly routines, details only someone intimately familiar with the home could know. Observers noticed the son-in-law faltering. His answers grew uncertain, pauses stretched longer, and he repeated himself as if trying to keep track of his own story. The investigators didn't rush. They circled back, gently yet firmly probing the same points, watching for cracks, testing consistency, and quietly drawing out the truth hidden beneath his uneasy responses. It was not a confession. There were no admissions of wrongdoing or direct acknowledgments of involvement. What made the moment significant was something more subtle and yet far more revealing. A visible change in composure. Body language, facial expressions, and small behavioral shifts were all noted by trained agents. Observers describe it as a moment where someone confronted with precise, intimate details about a familiar environment begins to struggle, even slightly, to maintain an even temperament. It was the kind of reaction investigators often look for in cases like this. The change did not prove guilt, but it highlighted that the questions were hitting close to home, and that the subject had an understanding of the environment that only someone familiar with it could possess. In other words, the room itself seemed to respond to the tension, and the focus of the investigation felt more urgent. Agents watching closely could see the subtle signs of stress, the micro changes in voice and posture, all suggesting that this line of questioning was meaningful. The encounter became a defining moment in the inquiry, signaling to investigators that the answers to the disappearance might be closer than previously thought, rooted in knowledge of the home and routines that only someone within Nancy Guthrie's circle could have known. FBI sources revealed that Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law appeared visibly uncomfortable during questioning about her disappearance. But what was he asked that unsettled him? Could he have known more about Nancy's disappearance than he admitted? Now, let's uncover why Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law became the focus of FBI scrutiny. Inside the critical window. By the time investigators brought Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law into the interview room, they had already narrowed the window of concern. Detectives focused on the roughly 4 hours between the moment Nancy was dropped off at her home and the sudden disconnection of her pacemaker, a crucial piece of the timeline that would define the investigation. Every movement, every interaction, and every detail during that short period was critical, and law enforcement needed clarity about who had been in contact with her and who could account for her whereabouts. What made this window so important was the fact that the last confirmed contact came not from a stranger, but from within her family circle. That reality changed the tone of the investigation. Investigators understood that anyone with intimate knowledge of Nancy's habits, routines, and the layout of her home would be in a position to know when she might be vulnerable. The goal was not to accuse without reason, but to determine who possessed the kind of familiarity that could make a difference in piecing together what happened that night. During questioning, agents reportedly focused on 3 critical areas that only someone closely connected to Nancy would know. First, they asked who had access to the garage code, the combination that allowed entry into her home. Second, they explored her medication schedule, understanding that missing even a single dose could have serious consequences for someone of her age. Third, they inquired about the exterior lights mentioned in the case, details that may seem small but could be significant in reconstructing movements and visibility on that night. Observers of the interview say that the tension in the room escalated noticeably as these specific questions were raised. The son-in-law's responses, while not a confession, reportedly became less assured. Pauses lengthened, answers were repeated, and he appeared to hesitate in ways he had not during more general questioning. Investigators paid careful attention to these subtle shifts, understanding that someone intimately familiar with Nancy's life would react differently when confronted with precise knowledge that a casual observer would not know. At this stage, investigators turned their gaze inward. While the public often suspects outsiders, law enforcement saw the answers might lie with those closest to Nancy. By studying who truly knew her life and habits, they could focus their search, peeling back layers of secrecy. Each familiar face became a clue, drawing them nearer to the truth amid lingering mystery. Nancy's son-in-law was asked detailed questions about her home and who else might know those same details. But what exactly were investigators trying to uncover through those questions? And how far did they go in the investigation? Let's find out. Inside the polygraph room, after the initial interview concluded, Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law was asked to undergo a polygraph examination, a tool investigators often use to gain deeper insight into the truth behind complex cases. While many people think of polygraphs as lie detectors, in high-profile investigations like this, their purpose goes far beyond simply determining guilt. Every change in breathing, every subtle fluctuation in pulse, and every involuntary reaction of the nervous system is carefully recorded as agents ask detailed questions about specific events. These physiological responses create a map of stress and awareness that can point toward inconsistencies or areas that need further scrutiny. During the examination, questions were not broad or general. Investigators focused on precise details from the night Nancy disappeared, targeting information only someone with direct knowledge would know. This included inquiries about her arrival home, the layout of her property, her usual routines, and other elements that could reveal familiarity with her daily life. Observers note that the polygraph session was conducted meticulously, with agents watching not just the answers given, but how they were delivered. Even a slight hesitation, a repeated phrase, or a visible shift in composure could provide a critical lead. One of the key strengths of this process is the comparison between the polygraph responses and the statements made during the initial interview. Investigators reportedly spent hours analyzing how the son-in-law's physiological reactions aligned or conflicted with his earlier words. For example, if he answered confidently during the first questioning, but showed heightened stress or hesitation when asked the same detail under the polygraph, that discrepancy became a point of interest. These signals do not automatically indicate wrongdoing, but they highlight areas that may warrant closer examination and can help detectives prioritize their next steps in the investigation. The polygraph also serves as a way to illuminate what investigators call the inner circle of a case. those closest to the victim whose knowledge and access may be essential to understanding what happened. By mapping reactions to targeted questions, law enforcement can identify gaps in memory, stress patterns, and behavioral cues that guide the investigation forward. While the results of this specific polygraph remain sealed, the process itself reportedly shaped the next phase of questioning, helping authorities focus on the details that could reveal critical information. In essence, the polygraph acts as a bridge between what was said and what may still be hidden, offering a window into reactions that could eventually help uncover the truth. Investigators went as far as subjecting Nancy's son-in-law to a polygraph examination to check the accuracy of his responses. But what surprising step did they take after the examination? Let's uncover the details. Returning to the scene. After completing both the initial interviews and the polygraph examination, investigators turned their attention back to the home where Nancy Guthrie spent her final evening before disappearing. What began as a routine check quickly became a pattern of repeated visits, each one carefully planned and executed. Law enforcement officers returned multiple times to the property, speaking again with neighbors, reviewing the layout, and examining the surroundings in painstaking detail. Observers of the investigation note that such persistent attention is rarely routine. When investigators revisit the same location repeatedly, it usually signals that either new information has emerged or that early findings require deeper context to make sense of the timeline. The goal of these return visits was not simply to double-check what had already been recorded. Detectives were attempting to reconcile statements made during interviews and polygraph examinations with tangible, physical evidence on the property. Every door, window, light, and pathway was observed for clues, with particular attention to anything that might help recreate the events of the crucial hours between Nancy being dropped off and her pacemaker disconnecting. Even the smallest detail could prove significant: an unusual mark on a porch, a subtle shift in shadows, or a neighbor's recollection of a car or movement outside. By comparing these observations with prior statements, law enforcement could build a clearer picture of what might have occurred during that narrow window. Re-interviewing neighbors was another key component of this effort. Witnesses who initially reported nothing unusual were asked again about cars, people, or sounds in the area, as investigators often discover that small, overlooked details can surface when questions are posed differently or after investigators have refined their understanding of the timeline. Every return visit allowed detectives to test assumptions and clarify inconsistencies, gradually piecing together a more precise reconstruction of Nancy's last known movements. The repeated attention to this single property underscores its central role in the investigation. This is not merely where Nancy spent her last evening. It is the starting point for understanding the chain of events that led to her disappearance. The thorough and persistent focus on this location demonstrates that investigators consider it a key piece of the puzzle. By returning to the scene repeatedly, law enforcement made sure nothing was overlooked, using both physical evidence and witness accounts to shed light on the troubling mystery. But what was discovered near the scene of the abduction, and how could it help the investigation? Now, let's explore a chilling clue. The mysterious black glove. In a startling development, investigators discovered a lone black glove approximately 1.5 miles from Nancy Guthrie's Tucson home, a detail that immediately raised concern and curiosity among law enforcement. The glove appears strikingly similar to the one worn by the masked figure captured on the haunting doorbell camera footage from the night of her disappearance. Its sudden appearance outside the immediate vicinity of Nancy's property instantly added a new layer of intrigue and urgency to the investigation, giving detectives something concrete to examine in a case that had been largely defined by uncertainty and unanswered questions. The glove was found carefully tucked into a small shrub, suggesting that it had been deliberately placed or dropped rather than being left haphazardly. Law enforcement officers quickly bagged the item and took it for forensic analysis, hoping to determine whether it might provide DNA, fingerprints, or other trace evidence that could connect it directly to the individual seen on camera or to someone known to Nancy. Authorities, however, have not released any information about who the glove might belong to, leaving the discovery shrouded in mystery and fueling speculation both inside and outside investigative circles. This single piece of evidence offers a tangible connection to the events of that night, serving as a rare link between the anonymous figure on video and the real-world environment surrounding Nancy's home. While it does not provide answers on its own, the glove suggests that crucial information may exist beyond the walls of the house, in the spaces and paths that led away from the property. Investigators are likely examining how its location fits into the broader timeline of the disappearance, considering how and why it ended up where it was found, and whether it points to a route taken by the abductor or someone moving with knowledge of Nancy's routines. The recovery of the glove has intensified the urgency of the case. It underscores that even small, seemingly isolated objects can hold critical clues that help reconstruct events and narrow the focus of the investigation. For detectives, this discovery may serve as a pivot point, connecting physical evidence to prior interviews, polygraph results, and the known movements of individuals closest to Nancy. Each detail, however small, has the potential to illuminate aspects of the disappearance that were previously hidden, and the presence of the glove has become one of the most closely examined elements in what remains a deeply puzzling and high-stakes investigation. The discovery of the glove adds a tangible connection to the mysterious events of that night. But what does the public assume about who it might belong to? And does that align with the investigators' perspective? Let's find out. Shifting focus inward. While much of the public's attention remained on strangers and outside suspects, law enforcement quietly took a different path, focusing on reconstructing Nancy Guthrie's final hours using information from the people closest to her. Investigators understood that the key to solving the disappearance might not lie in distant leads or anonymous figures captured on surveillance, but within the circle of those who knew her daily routines, her habits, and the layout of her home. Every statement, every recollection from family members was carefully examined, compared, and cross-checked to build a detailed timeline of what had happened from the moment she left her daughter's house to the moment her pacemaker disconnected. As external leads slowed, with masked figures, ransom messages, and unusual movements offering little tangible progress, internal verification continued at a steady and deliberate pace. Agents revisited interviews, scrutinized earlier accounts, and compared statements against physical evidence collected at Nancy's home and nearby locations. The subtle inconsistencies and repeated emphasis on details like garage codes, exterior lighting, and medication schedules became more than procedural questions. They were threads investigators were determined to pull, in hopes of weaving together a clearer picture of that night. The family's public communications reflected this shift in focus as well. Early statements seemed aimed at addressing a potential abductor, pleading for her safe return, and acknowledging the possibility of an external threat. Over time, however, their tone and messaging subtly changed. Appeals became more general, focused on soliciting information from the public rather than negotiating with or responding to an unknown captor. Former investigators analyzing these communications suggest that such a change rarely happens without reason. It often signals that authorities have begun reconsidering previous assumptions, perhaps realizing that the most significant knowledge about the disappearance resides not with outsiders, but with those within Nancy's immediate circle. Investigators quietly shifted focus, revealing a key principle. While outsiders and potential threats matter, those closest to the victim often hold the crucial pieces of the puzzle. By carefully reconstructing timelines, comparing recollections, and probing detailed responses, attention moved inward. What first appeared to be a case shaped by mysterious strangers gradually revealed the importance of daily routines, intimate knowledge, and proximity. This subtle pivot in both investigation and public messaging signals a deliberate strategy, one that inches authorities closer to understanding the true circumstances of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, uncovering truths that only those nearby could provide. The difference between the public's view of the culprit and the investigator's approach means the perpetrator cannot be easily predicted. But what does the footage reveal about the masked abductor? Now, let's delve into how repeated checks shaped the Nancy Guthrie investigation. Moments that speak louder than words. The leaked footage and accounts of Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law's questioning do not show any confession. There are no admissions of guilt or direct acknowledgments of involvement. What they do capture, however, is a moment investigators often look for in high-stakes cases, a subtle but telling struggle to maintain consistency under pressure. When confronted with detailed, precise questions about the night Nancy disappeared, the subject's pauses, repeated answers, and slight hesitations revealed the kinds of reactions that trained agents pay close attention to. These are the moments when the mind and body respond in ways that words alone cannot fully mask, offering clues that can guide investigators toward the next steps in an unfolding inquiry. This behavioral response did not occur in isolation. It came alongside repeated visits to the home where Nancy had spent her final evening, rigorous questioning about intimate details of her daily life and routines, and the recovery of physical evidence. Taken together, these elements highlight the central question investigators are grappling with. Were the answers hidden in a chance encounter with a stranger? Or did they lie closer to home, in the knowledge of someone who understood Nancy's habits, her schedule, and the small details of her life that only a trusted insider would know? Every piece of evidence and every observed reaction feeds into this central inquiry, forming a network of leads that investigators must carefully connect. The interrogation, the polygraph session, the repeated returns to the property, and the discovery of the glove all contributed to shaping the direction of the investigation. While authorities have not made any conclusions public, these actions show that the focus has been deliberate and methodical, guided by evidence rather than speculation. The combination of psychological observation, detailed questioning, and physical clues allowed investigators to refine their understanding of the events that unfolded during the critical hours of Nancy's disappearance. Even as the case remains active and unresolved, the sequence of investigative steps makes one thing clear. The answers may not come from a masked stranger or an anonymous lead, but from the careful study of those closest to Nancy and the environment in which she lived. The footage, the evidence, and the investigative approach together form a narrative that slowly narrows the field, showing that every gesture, every hesitation, and every object discovered may hold a vital key to uncovering what truly happened. So, what do you make of Nancy's son-in-law's reaction? Could he be holding back some crucial details? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.